the sky, vengeance in its eyes, vengeance in its eyes. All hope seems to die when he sees your eyes running through the night. Only takes him back, always side to side, crowding through the night. Run, you can run, but you'll never hide. The walls are coming, you're running. The walls are coming, you're running. The walls are coming, you're running. The walls are coming.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Absolutely amazing to have a great show tonight. It is literally 6 weeks till the start, 6 days till the start of the Premier League season. Wolves 5:30 kickoff live to the world against Manchester City. Wolverhampton Wanderers, who under Vitor Pereira last year pulled away from the relegation zone to eventually finish 16th. Wolverhampton Wanderers that have sold Cunha, Ryan Ait-Nouri, Sarabia's gone, Semedo's gone, Doyle's gone, Boubacar Traore's gone, others have gone. There's others said that they might be going. We have bought in 4 players. We've signed Jurgen Strand-Larsen, obviously on a permanent, but he was already here. David Moller-Wolf has come in as a potential left wing back to compete with Hugo Bueno. John Arias, who was in team of the tournament at the Club World Cup, and of course, young Fer Lopez. There's so many questions that I know people want answered, and there are no better people that I can think of to bring on tonight to try and throw a little bit of insight on this that people sort of know a lot more than what I do. First of all, every one of you will know him. He's a massive Wolves fan. He's a foundation ambassador, and you regularly see him interviewing players all over Sky and doing special stuff. It is, of course, the one and only Johnny Phillips. Hello, Johnny. Welcome to the show tonight.
Thanks, Dave. That was a lovely build-up you gave me there. Yeah, great to be involved at such an interesting time in the summer. As you said, 6 days till it all starts.
6 days till it all starts. And, mate, I've done a post tonight, and everyone will want to know about this. We'll come on to it in a minute. A lot of questions. We'll come on to it. But apparently, people want to know about the penny has dropped, and if you're picking up the penny or something. So we will put that myth to right for everyone, because it's literally so many on that. Also tonight. Oh, by the way, Johnny, one thing, just casual towards the end of the show, a bit later on in the show, I've heard that you're putting on a Johnny Phillips special next year, helping the foundation with Mr. Mick McCarthy.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's the only reason I'm coming on these programs, Dave, but yeah, thanks for plugging the night. It's going to be a top night supporting the Wolves Foundation with Mick McCarthy, but we can go into that later.
Yeah, it's all right. We have a chat about that a little bit later.
Yeah,
towards the end. Okay, and making his full debut here on the channel tonight, from the Mail, it is Tom Collomosse. Hello, Tom. Thank you ever so much for coming on tonight. You've done a fantastic article recently about Wolves, really in depth, and I'm hoping you can throw a little bit more light on that. But thanks ever so much for coming back on. Tell people a little bit more about you and your background, please.
Yeah, it's actually Collomosse, Dave, but no problem at all.
Apologies.
A lot of people tend to get that wrong. I've had it all my life. Yeah, I've been on the Midlands patch now for coming up to 6 years. Before that, I was at the Evening Standard in London, originally from Yorkshire, and actually my sort of first mentor in sports journalism would be Mr. Johnny Phillips, probably, who I remember taking me under his wing at Team Talk in 1996. It's a long time ago, offices in Leeds. So I actually remember the first bulletin you did about Wolves back then, and I was listening in on it. I think they were about to sign David Connolly, maybe. It always kind of sticks with me that it's like Steve Bull, Ewan Robertson. I don't know if he actually signed that summer, but no, good memories.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you go back a bit then, you two.
Yeah, and it's great that you've got Tom on, because I mean, not all Wolves fans will know of Tom, because obviously he worked down in London for many years, and he's a national newspaper reporter now who covers a lot of different teams. But in terms of someone from a national paper who's on top of Wolves and on top of things with Wolves, Tom's spot on. You know, he writes really, really good stuff about Wolves, and I'd say to any Wolves fans out there, follow him on Twitter, follow his follow his writing, because he does know what's going on at the club as well. And as he said, we worked together many moons when we were just trying to make our way in this game.
Fantastic. And here you are all this time later on Always Wolves Fan TV and podcast. I can tell you we've already got across, we're live across YouTube, Facebook and X. We all call it still Twitter. But before we get stuck in, I do want to say, as always, a big thank you to the guys over at Creation Wolf who power Extra Time. Local digital company, fantastic people. They'll take your brand and online presence and digital capabilities to the next level. You can find them on creationwolf.com. So look, Johnny, let's get this dealt with at the top. I'm just going to read out some of these questions. To quote Johnny in June, he believed the penny had dropped with Fosun. Should fans now start to doubt that that's the case, or should they not panic and wait till the end of the window? Surely one question is, where did he get this penny dropped article from? Fosun proving again how incompetent they are. Daz wants to know, ask Johnny where the penny has dropped, because it seems Fosun are having trouble finding it. David Landucci, as a well-respected journalist in these parts, Johnny's article on the penny dropping within Fosun encouraged fan base and persuaded many to renew season tickets. It seems like nothing has changed. Someone else has quote tweeted it, which is quite funny. Made me laugh at one of the quote tweets here as well. If I can just hold on, just read that for you. Review post interactions. There we go. Someone has put it down as the penny has dropped podcast. Apparently. So, Johnny, this penny has dropped. I've read your article from June, which is about cultural and structural shift emergencies at Wolves, and I've read it all the way through it, and I cannot see a penny has dropped.
It got a life of its own, didn't it?
Where this has come from, because everyone seems to be quoting this.
Yeah, I've never written an article where I've used the words "the penny has dropped." So to put that to bed straight away. I did a WM interview after Matt Hobbs was mutually relieved of his duties with Daz Hale. It was excellent, by the way. I really like Daz. And Daz put a question to me amongst many other questions. He said something along the lines of, "Do you think the penny has dropped?" So in answer to that, I sort of said, "Yeah, I do think the penny has dropped." So it was a question, and it certainly wasn't my term. It certainly wasn't. A lot of people have said it's a steer from the club. You know, Jeff Shee hasn't rung me up and said, "Can you tell Wolves fans the penny has dropped?" That hasn't happened. It was just my opinion to answer that question. If they'd said, "Do you think they've realised they've made mistakes?" I'd have said, "Yeah, they've realised they've made mistakes." So it was just an answer to a question on a radio interview that I'm sure will be out there somewhere. But yeah, I never wrote an article saying that, and I'm always very careful. You know, words are important, words matter. So I'd always choose my words carefully in anything I commit to writing down. And also there's context to everything as well. You know, but I was happy enough to answer the questions and agree that, you know, it had to some degree. You know, by the penny dropping, I certainly wouldn't say that Jeff Shee or Fosun have sat under a tree and apples landed on their head and they've suddenly discovered gravity. You know, there's been no eureka moment, no anything moment like that, no Isaac Newton moment. What I would say is there's probably a recognition over a number of years that what they have been doing needs to change. In that they're not going to keep finding wonder kids on the cheap, you know, Paraguayan wingers with a great future, reserve team, Portuguese fullbacks, whatever, who can't be of any use. As we've probably found in the last year or so, managers have struggled to get signings into the first team. I think what they've wanted to do is restructure. And I said in the article I wrote that it's going to be a more fluid structure, bring George Mendes back on board a little bit more, give Vitor Pereira a bit more control over where he's going. He's been given a sporting director. Obviously, there's been a huge management restructure, football management restructure, and then clear out the deadwood, clear out the players who aren't really going to make an impression. And then when they do sign players that Pereira can pick. They can pick for his squad, pick for his first team. And to some degree, that's happened. But obviously, clearly, they're very, very short on who they've brought in at the moment. Absolutely. I'd agree with every supporter who says we are not signing or we haven't signed enough players yet. But yeah, that's just a bit of context. But I'd never wrote an article saying the penny had dropped.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's Johnny. It's become one of these urban myths. It'll probably be in years to time. When you pass away years from now, it'll be on your tombstone. The penny has dropped, something like that. It'll stay with that. That will. You'll have maybe a T-shirt or if you write your memoirs, maybe that could be the title of of your memoir or something like that.
The penny has dropped. The Wolves fan has dropped, dead. Well, there you go.
Tom, let's talk on to you. You did an absolutely fantastic article. If you haven't already done it, Tom does write some really, really great in-depth articles on the Mail in the Mail, and your article dropped just 2 or 3 days ago. Do you want to just go into a little bit of that what you've covered in that article for people?
I think a lot of it's what Johnny's just talked about there, and one point to make at the start, I think, is that they are trying to get players in. And a wider point to make is that I think they're in a problem position that a lot of clubs in the Premier League are in now, in that there's an elite who are away and gone in terms of spending, revenue, everything else. And then there's teams that come up and probably go straight back down. And then there's this kind of big group in the middle from about 8th to 15th. That really, it's probably quite hard to get supporters on side. Crystal Palace were kind of the outlier last year because they went on a brilliant run and won the FA Cup. But you can't possibly compete with the top teams. I think even repeating the sort of 7th place that Wolves did under Nuno financially now is very difficult. And you're probably not going to be in serious relegation trouble unless you mess absolutely everything up. I mean, if you just look at last season, the nightmare that Wolves had in the first 4 months, by rights, that should have been a relegation battle for the rest of the season, probably going down to the last day if they're lucky. But the bottom 3 is so weak that all it needed was a halfway decent manager to come in and tweak a few things, and it was no problem. Improving that is the difficult part, isn't it? I think what Johnny said, the arrival of Domenico Tetti, is really important because he's an ally of Pereira. I think as much as a sporting director in kind of Matt Hobbs role, he's not that really. He's much more of a kind of a link man between the departments who will communicate what Pereira wants in all the meetings and all the recruitment decisions. And as Johnny said, I think Pereira's he's not the main guy in recruitment, but I do know, for example, John Arias was his pick, and nothing will go past him that he isn't happy with, and players that he couldn't pick, as Johnny said. So I do think the structure's better, and I think they're conscious that the structure's better. I mentioned in the piece that they look back at 12 months ago, and really it was O'Neill and Hobbs running the show, and there wasn't really anybody else that thought were taking decisions. They weren't asking themselves the right questions. They think that had this structure been in place 12 months ago, you wouldn't have had Lamina as captain, you wouldn't have had O'Neill carrying on for so long when it's clearly everything was going wrong. There were problems in pre-season, I think, that weren't picked up on. But the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, won't it? You can say all these things, but if they lose 5 out of the first 6, then we'll be back to where we started.
No, absolutely. And mate, I mean, your article's really, really good. There's a few people that have put to that. I'm just reading through it now. Just one of the questions that's come up. In fact, I was stopped in the street, actually, whilst doing a video the other day when I was with my dad. Actually, some guy come over to me, and the rumours going around Wolverhampton that Vitor Pereira is going to leave. I'm kind of saying that ain't going to happen. They've bought in his backroom team. They bought in 2 more assistants. Domenico Tetti's come in, like what you're saying. Johnny and Tom, this is another myth, because obviously Julian Lopetegui walked. Can you reassure the Wolves fans that Domenico Tetti, that Vitor Pereira is not going to walk?
I've not heard that he's going to walk. I've heard that he wants more players in. He's not comfortable going into the season with what he's got. Domenico Tetti, I've heard, has made a very positive influence around the training ground with obviously the players, but he's been very keen to learn the to learn what's going on around the club structurally and administratively as well, and very keen to sort of get on board with everything on that front. He's made a good impression with the playing staff, good impression with the administration staff, good impression with the management, obviously. I mean, Pereira was allowed to bring in Teti and 2 coaches as well, so it would be some turnaround for him to be about to walk out, having been given the opportunity to bring in his own staff, 3 of his own staff, all on contracts, for him to suddenly decide that it's not what was sold. So no, I've not heard that he's going to walk, but I know for a fact he wants more in, and he's absolutely can't go in with what he's got at the moment. And I think fans have every right to be critical. They pay a lot of money to have season tickets, and those ticket prices went up. It's a difficult. I always think the summer's difficult. There's no football, or no meaningful football, no competitive football. So there's almost like a vacuum, and it's filled with things. And especially in the social media generation, it doesn't take a lot to fill that vacuum with sort of all sorts of things going on. When the manager isn't speaking every week, the manager isn't speaking before and after his games. No one's there to ask the manager how he feels. No one's there to find out what's really going on in terms of the manager's own mind. So I think summers can be difficult. And even now, as we sit here, it's not really the time to judge a transfer window. Ideally, Wolves needed players in before the start of the season, which might still happen. It might not. But also, there's a best part of a month to go with the transfer window. You can't, I use the analogy of the Ryder Cup. You can't come away from the Ryder Cup after the first 2 days and say Europe or USA have had a shocker. Most of the points that happen on the 3rd day. And with the transfer window, most of the deals happen late. And as Tom touched on, there's going to be 9 teams in Europe next season who are more attractive than Wolves. There's the elite who are way ahead of us. So it's hard. It's just genuinely hard. You look at what Everton have done. Everton have got a phenomenal training ground, a phenomenal stadium that they're moving into, 50,000 there every week. Whether Wolves fans like it or not, a better history than Wolves. They've won more heritage, more everything than Wolves. And they've had to shell out enormous amounts of money just to get Keane and Dewsbury Hall through the door. And then, there's obviously the stuff that's going on with Palace and the struggles they're having. And this is a team in Europe who've won the Cup. So,
and the Charity Shield today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a struggle, and maybe what's going on says more about Wolves standing in the Premier League than it does about where anything else. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how it plays out. But I 100% understand the concern at this stage with the squad that Wolves have now at this at this point.
I want to bring.
I'm with Johnny on Pereira. Actually, it's difficult to say ever. This will not happen. We've all been doing football and journalism for so long that you can look very, very silly if you say, I will guarantee 100% this thing won't happen. However, everything Johnny says is right. And also, it's pretty rare for managers to walk out these days. It doesn't really happen. I mean, Lopetegui got as close as anyone, but even then, he was still paid off, So I think that there's something from Wolves' side here too, and I touched on it a bit in the piece, in that you look back 12 months ago, they gave new contracts to O'Neill and all his staff. Fast forward to December, and they're sacking him after a horrendous start. Now, I think Pereira is a much better coach than O'Neill, and I don't think that'll happen. But you could understand why they might be a bit cautious as well. We've already got all these coaches, and we'll give him a long new contract, and then it all turns to dust. So you can see why there will be caution on both sides. But for all the reasons Johnny gave, I would be surprised if he suddenly were to say, right, this isn't what I signed up for, goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely. There's someone that's just posted, I think it's Craig Hughes. I'm just looking for his post, actually, that he's just put. Well, basically, what he said was that, look at Vitor Pereira's record. He doesn't stay around long. He moves around a lot. The one thing I want to say to that, Craig, in answer to that, Vitor Pereira, by his own admission, doesn't like to sit at home sitting on his hands. He's said when he came to Wolves, he's had a lot of jobs. He likes to get out there and work. He loves coaching, and he's taken jobs when he's moved on straight away and then moved again. If you've listened to all the stuff that he said, his entire coaching managerial career has been geared towards getting a job in the Premier League. He came close 2, 3, 4 times. You know, he's not here necessarily for the money. He's here to try and achieve something. And just because he's moved around a lot in the past, it's not because he gets bored. It's because he won't sit at home, and so he takes a job on in the short term. I think that's fair comment, isn't it, Johnny? And on
I
that.
mean, yeah, and especially if you look at some of the countries and leagues he's worked in, it's areas that turn over managers quite quickly anyway. I do think the point is, Craig, I think the point that he's made is interesting, though. He has moved around, and you can never count that out. Someone who's moved around as often as Pereira has could easily do it again. You know, history does repeat itself. So I think it's a really valid point to make. But I know he was cut up about not getting that Everton job, and that really that cut deep, and he thought that might be it. And then obviously when O'Neill went and Wolves were in a position, you know, got to a fairly desperate position, and George Mendes came in, stepped in and approached Vitor. It was a big opportunity for him, and you know, he didn't think that was coming. And then obviously he's made the start he's had, and he sees this as a great opportunity. You know, he's nobody's fool. He knows what the Premier League's about. He knows how hard it is. But yeah, you know, Craig's right. He does move around, but I think this is a job unlike any other that he's had in a league where, let's face it, if he walks away from Wolves, he's not coming back to the Premier League. So, yeah. But as Tom says, you know, you can never say never. Who knows what's going through his mind at this moment?
Absolutely, I can imagine he's frustrated. Like Tom, obviously, when in your article it said Mail Sport understands the contract situation will be addressed properly when the transfer window closes. Neither side feels it needs to be hasty. There's one other important point: Wolves handed the O'Neill and his contract, like as you said. That's the general feeling that you're and new views that you're getting from within Wolves and Pereira. Then generally, they're relaxed about it.
I don't think there's that sense of stress, quite legitimately, that there was with Lopetegui, because that was a really grim summer, wasn't it? And it was, you know, impressive that O'Neill was able to come and take up the slack and have that good first half of the season. I don't think it's at that level at all. He gave an interview in Portugal, Pereira, didn't he? Said, look, we need more players in. But it's a leap from that to get to Lopetegui land, I think. So if you look at all clubs, the transfer window is not normally the time when they will be sorting out contracts of key staff. That there might be kind of an agreement somewhere, a loose agreement, but then they'll go finalise it in September when the squad's built, be that players, be that coaches. And, you know, as Johnny said, you can't ever say this will definitely happen. But I'd be very surprised if it comes September, come October, there weren't some kind of agreement on the way forward.
Absolutely. And sticking with you, Tom. Obviously, part of your article, you talk about, because like from Wolves fans' point of view, everybody pretty much accepted that Matheus Cunha was going to go from like eventually getting him to stay in January. It was going to go probably Ryan Ait-Nouri. Sarabia was running out of his contract. He was one of the highest earners of the club. Nelson Semedo, again, another one. He was offered a new contract, but he's eventually gone. Obviously, they've also put out the likes of Tommy Doyle, Boubacar Traore. There's quite a lot that gone out, but we have brought in, like you say, 4 players at the moment. John Arias being probably the one that stands out with. The other ones are obviously still tried and tested at the moment at this level, and probably John Arias, because it's the Premier League. It might take time to adjust. But Wolves fans are very, very stressed because we've watched pre-season. We've all watched pre-season. We've had 6 pre-season games. We've drawn 2. We've lost 4. In each of the last 3 pre-season games against Racing Club Lens, Girona, and against Celta Vigo at the weekend. In the first half, we had a fair bit of possession. We knocked the ball about. We had absolutely no cutting edge. John Arias had one chance the weekend, and then in the second half of all of those games, they've stepped it up, and we've kind of almost been blown away at the back. Do you want to try and reassure Wolves fans that why it's been so people see it's so slow in the window? Because you do talk about it a little bit in your article on why that might be.
Yeah, I think the reason it was slow at the start of the window was because of the restructuring. I go into it in the piece. That you had Hobbs out the door, and then this new kind of 5-man team in. Domenico Tetti, as Johnny said, you've got George Mendes being brought back on board. It really was. It's the kind of restructure that if that had been Manchester United, people would have been talking about it for about a week. It'd be every little update on it. It's basically a whole clear out of the way they were working to impose a completely different way of doing things. And that's going to kind of take its time to shape down. Now, what I'd say about preseason, I would never say disregard preseason entirely. I think that's silly because you can see certain things in it. However, my first season covering Tottenham was a 2008-2009 season. That pre-season, they beat Roma 5-0 at White Hart Lane. It was a good Roma team as well. David Bentley scored. And that was the trend generally of that pre-season. All of a sudden, you get to November, they've got 2 points from 8 games and they're sacking the manager. So I'm not saying that's why we disregard pre-season, but I'm always quite careful of pre-season and not trying to watch too much of it even, because I just think the indications you get from it aren't that great. Like, is anybody saying after the Community Shield, or as Liverpool got problems here, they couldn't put away Crystal Palace? Not really. So just give it time, get to the end of the window, see where they're sitting then, and see where it goes from there. I do understand the concerns, and because I'm not a Wolves fan, obviously you're not as in it, you're not as involved in it, emotionally attached to it. But I would just wait for competitive stuff to start.
Yeah, Dave. One thing I'd add to that: a lot of pre-season games are about looking at from a management point of view and a coaching point of view, are looking about what you're not supposed to do and what you shouldn't be doing as what you are doing. Now, we might not know, but Pereira might have had a look at lobbed a player in who he doesn't quite fancy and think, I'd be interested to see this because I don't think he's going to do much in this game, and he doesn't do much in the game, and he's been validated by that, and he's learned something from that. And then pre-season games are absolutely about looking at little things, tinkering with little things. He might have started Hoover in a game where he's thinking, I'm not sure about Hoover. And then
it was create a market for him maybe as well. So,
yeah, absolutely. Pre-season matches are about looking at things and very, very often little things or small areas of the pitch or whatever. I'm not saying they're disregarding the general performance, but they could be about something incredibly precise that he wants to look at for a half or for 90 minutes, and he's prepared to sacrifice the overall flow of the game or the overall this and that. Now, that does happen in pre-season. It's not a case of coming in, getting a big result in front of a decent crowd, and those things help. And I would absolutely agree with every Wolves fan who's saying, there are alarm bells in pre-season. There are certain things that haven't looked great, and there are clearly not enough players in the first team squad. But to Tom's point, the results are never an indicator, and very often they're trying things that they would never dream of trying in a game, almost to be proved right about a player not being ready or not being here.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think all of those points are really, really important. I think every fan pretty much knows that pre-season is about getting fitness, is about getting, time into the legs, about trying things. But I think most fans want to see some sort of identity. And when you're watching pre-season game after pre-season game, and look how many fans turned up to Stoke away, it was boring to watch the game. How many Wolves fans turned up to Bescott? How many were there yesterday? And you're looking for some sort of identity, and the same issues seem to be arising. I think most fans can understand that it's pre-season, but they want to see some sort of identity, some sort of excitement. And we haven't really been seeing that. Saying that, I had Mel Eves on the reaction straight after the game, and we were talking, and he was saying, like, sometimes you can have a pre-season where you, like what you're saying, Tom, you can beat everyone in sight, and then 8 games in, you're on 2 points, and you can have the worst pre-season possible, and you start like a steam train. Until the real action starts, you don't really know. But I think what a lot of Wolves fans are really concerned, because if you look at the Wolves team right now from the end of last season, are we stronger than we were at the end of last season in terms of what we've got, in terms of the quality, in terms of the depth of quality? And I think the answer's no. Now, Tom and Johnny, coming on to this recruitment, we've brought in technically 4 players. Jurgen Strand-Larsen, his deal's been made permanent. John Arias looks like a real catch. Some guy, a guy that gave his word to Wolves, even though there's others interested in him, and has come to Wolves. Obviously, he knows Andre from his time playing down in South America, and he knows Yerson from the Colombian national team. David Moller-Wolf, what a great name. If he's half the player of John de Wolf, becoming a legend, he'll be a player. He's I interviewed a AZ fan and a Dutch football follower the other day. He said his first year in the step up to the Dutch Eredivisie, he was really struggled, and then he was quite good last year. He's a little bit concerned about him stepping up into the Premier League and how long that's going to take to adapt. And Fernando Lopez, another young lad, but every time I've seen him in pre-season, he looks like full of energy. He's almost like a Rodrigo Gomez. He seems to have something. But those are just those 3 players that have come in. Our wing-backs, especially on that right-hand side, I think the way Vitor Pereira likes to play with the high wing-backs, to me, it's an area of concern. And what I want to know is, from your understanding, and what has been mentioned, is that there's still 3 or 4 players that are going to come in. Is it a matter of Wolves, the dominoes starting to drop, which will open up opportunities for Wolves to bring players in? And have you heard anything about anything more concrete of any players coming in and what sort of positions? If you want to go first on that, Jono.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, I'd be surprised if it wasn't 3 that they want to bring in, and how achievable that is. You'd like to think it's very achievable, given that there are funds there, and the restructure they've had at the top of the club. It should be achievable. The thing is, Pereira's been really clear about what he wants and the type of first team play he wants to bring in. So they're not looking at prospects for the future. They're not looking this, that, the other. They're looking at genuine players who can walk into the first team.
Johnny, just on that point, I think that's quite reassuring, because what we don't want is players, they might be good in a year or 2. We need up and ready players, don't we?
And that's the key. And that's why,
never any good.
Yeah, and that's why, to go back to the penny drop thing, that's why they're aware of that. They know that. And whereas in previous years, there's been an element of almost being too cute with it and almost trying to find, a wonder kid for $1 million that you can sell for 80. They know that's not the way to operate. And certainly Vitor Pereira and Domenico Tetti know that. But it's hard, and it would be a failing. It would be a failing if they don't bring these players in. They absolutely need to, because of the shortcomings that currently exist in the first team squad. Every fan has its own opinion about where the areas are that need strengthening. But yeah, also you've got to realise that a lot of the time George Mendes loves operating late in the market as well, and so there will be opportunities later on. And I know it's hard, it's difficult. I'm probably not answering your question here as well as I should be. But if you look around, I think there's a lot of clubs have resigned to having to operate late, and it's not ideal. And Wolves are going to go into a game against Manchester City short, definitely short, and that's not ideal, and that's not what they would have wanted. But they front loaded the front of the window with getting the right players out. Well, not the right players, the players that could bring in money and the players that were on the periphery. Now they've got to backload the end of the window with getting the right players in, and you know, and that's on Wolves, that is, and that's on the recruitment team. Tom, I imagine, you know, can add to that on some level as well.
Yeah, I look forward to doing
I
that.
think
We've literally got 1,500 people watching this live, and say loads more will watch it back and catch up and then out on the podcast. It's a real key question. Johnny's answered that. So if you can add a little bit more icing on that for us, that would be amazing.
I think clubs are always offered players at this time as well. So a lot of the time when you see so-and-so linked with such and such, it's that they're being proposed to the club. Now, if we take a player, Milan Van Evik, the Coventry fullback, who Wolves have been linked with quite extensively, it's my understanding that that is much more coming from his camp. They rate him, think he's a decent player, but as far as I can see, I know there are other players who are above him in the pecking order. So I think if they ended up with him, it wouldn't necessarily be an alarm bell, but it would suggest that some of the further option, the preferred options, had not happened. I'm also, what Johnny says about George Mendes is really interesting as well, and I think Fernando Lopez is probably a bit of a canary in the coal mine for where Wolves stand in the Mendes empire at the moment, because I must say I was surprised by the fee paid for him, given I think he made 7 senior starts for Celta Vigo.
Yeah.
But from everything I hear, he's really looked the part. Not just in the matches, but in training. He's the kind of physical type that Pereira likes, and they're quite excited about him. So if Mendes has managed to steer him to Wolves, and he's turns out to be a real prospect, I think that's good news, and it's good news for the players who might come in. Look, you know, nobody's saying they're suddenly going to get Ruben Neves, João Moutinho, and Raul Jimenez again. That's probably not realistic, but I do think that they'll get players in. I think there'll be at least 3, maybe 4. I think they're looking at younger players for sure, because everyone in the market has to operate in this way where you're looking at future value, unless you're the big 6. But just because they're young doesn't mean that there'll be, you know, people who don't make the grade, or that they won't be ready right now. So I think those are the things to look out for, really. And what's good, I think, is that Pereira really knows the sorts of players that he wants. If people want to read the piece, I'll go into a bit more depth on it in there, but he knows the types he wants, and he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who will accept. I don't really fancy that guy who will take him just to have a body in. So I hope I've managed to put a bit of flesh on the bone there.
Yeah, no, I mean, on all of that, that's good. I'm expecting still 3 or 4 signings to come in. Like you say, we're being linked with players. Sometimes agents leak things and it comes out and they're getting their player over and stuff like that. And there's a lot of moving parts in the deal. And obviously, I think the other thing that you've mentioned as Wolves fans, we're all very, very focused on what's happening with Wolves. But if you actually look around the Premier League, which is a bit like what you mentioned, Johnny, there's a lot of clubs and a lot of fans kind of saying the same sort of thing at this point in time. They're not being able to get their players over, or, you know, we were linked with the guy, aren't we, the lad from Sevilla, but like Napoli are in for him. So, you know, you're going to pick Wolverhampton or Champions League and Napoli, and Pubel was another one, wasn't he, that we were linked with and has gone elsewhere. Vitor Pereira, from again what you've been saying in your article, he's looking for players that are really committed to Wolves, and what he wants, Tom.
I think all of them. This new leadership team, that's a big focus. Now, I was told that with the Pubel deal, they thought they could have done it. They did think they could get that over the line. Obviously, Atletico Madrid is more of an attractive option. Nobody's going to dispute that. But they thought they could get him in, presumably because he would have played every week. But they doubted whether him and his entourage were entirely all in on it. And it was the same with Juan Luis Sanchez, who I believe, when they were talking about different topics, the issue of relegation clauses comes up. Now, obviously, that's going to be a red flag, because you're looking the agent in the eye thinking, oh, well, this guy thinks we're going down, so they're probably he's not going to be the top option at this point. So it's easy, of course, to say, oh, we never wanted them anyway when they haven't come to you. But I do think that they've been burned in the past, maybe by people coming in who just say, look at Guedes, probably never wanted to be at Wolves in the first place. Mateus Nunes was out the door as soon as he could get in. And a lot of mid-table Premier League clubs will almost sell themselves as, look, you come here, you do well for a couple of years, you can get a move to Champions League. I think there's a danger in that the player comes and he's already got his eye out, one eye out the door. And I think Wolves have seen that this summer. Whether it turns out to be right or not, let's see. But I do think that they're wary of having more signings like maybe Guedes or Nunes, who cost a lot of money, but certainly in the case of Guedes, just didn't produce at all.
Absolutely, Johnny. Some players that on the way out potentially, or people have sort of said that Wolves are open to selling. Wang Hee-chan has come up. Fabio Silva, the ongoing saga, which we seem to be talking about every pre-season. Is he going to get another chance? I was literally sitting 4 foot from him at the Bestcock game. He was there. He's been turning up with the squad. He's not been involved in anything. He seems to be hanging out for a deal for Roma, and it was linked to Borussia Dortmund as well, I think. What's your gut feeling on where he'll end up? Because Wolves are apparently holding out for more like 20 to 25 million they want for him, and people don't. Want to...
I'd care more about how much he ends up going for than where. I don't really care where he ends up, but I'd like to get 20 or 25 million quid for him. That'd be amazing. But we'll see. And then obviously Hwang comes with. Hwang's an interesting one. I like Hwang as a squad player. I haven't got a problem with Hwang, and I wouldn't be looking to push him out the door by any stretch of the imagination. He might not be Pereira's type of player. If Pereira writes, his list down, and Hwang won't be on it. But if you say to Pereira, can I trust him to do a job when I need him to do a job because I haven't got my first plan A available, then I definitely look at Hwang and say, yeah, that's not an issue. So in terms of who's left to go out the door, then people are talking about those. But fans are absolutely more interested at the moment of who's left to come in. Who could possibly come in. The one thing I think where Fosun have got making up to do, or the club in general have got making up to do, and I wrote about this in the last piece I did. I said, why would Nelson Semedo sign on at Wolves again? Why would he, whatever the contract was there, why would he sign it? Because at the moment, he's probably looking at his last big contract and deciding where he wants to go and can I try something new, a new project, a new this, a new that. If you're staying at Wolves, is there honestly enough to keep a player of Semedo's, sort of story career here? And I'd say probably not. Had you asked that question to him in the 2018 summer, and he looks around and he sees Ruben Neves and João Moutinho in midfield, and he sees Jimenez and Jota up front, then he absolutely signs on. And I think that's where Wolves need to get back to a situation. If they're asking themselves, why can't we get these players in, or why can't we get that? That's why, because you're looking at where the club is at in terms of moving forward, and that's where I think that's where the fans' concerns really come from. They really come from a place of looking at ambition, looking at potential growth, looking at what they can achieve. But it's ridiculously hard, and a lot does go on.
The margin of error for clubs outside the kind of revenue generating monsters is so tiny. In that Manchester United can get it wrong summer after summer after summer after summer, not even getting to Europe. But because they sell 1 billion shirts, or in some obscure corner of the world, they can go out and spend however much on Mateus Cunha, Benjamin Šeško. Wolves have a bad summer. in terms of signings where they push the boat out. So you look at the Guedes and Nunes, and you kind of paying for it for 4 years after that, aren't you? If you're not careful, not just Wolves, but many clubs. You know, there's, and then obviously you get into the Championship, and those are the kind of mistakes that send you into an absolute financial downward spiral. So I do think it's fundamentally, it's not much comfort to Wolves fans who just want to see people through the door, but the Premier League is fundamentally, it's imbalanced now, isn't it? You have Tottenham could finish 17th and get the Champions League by winning another competition. You know, and Man United being the classic example, underachievement. Everything's wrong about the football side of it, but they just get chance after chance after chance because they have the money all the time. Most clubs don't have that.
Absolutely. Now, I know, Tom, you've only got till 9 because you've got a family Zoom at 9 o'clock. And so me and Johnny can finish off after 9 if you just run over a little bit over that. A couple of things that have come up, and we want if there's any questions for Tom as well before he has to shoot off. Fosun, people want to know, are they open to a sale? And people also want to know about development at Molyneux and things like that. I don't know if there's anything that you have heard on those sort of lines. I know in your piece that you did, your excellent article, you have talked about some infrastructure changes at Molyneux and the training ground, which you might want to talk about a little bit as well.
Yeah, there's different things happening at Compton, which I think are quite exciting. Again, if people could read the piece, that'd be great, and I'd go into some detail in that. But in terms of Fosun, I don't think they're actively trying to sell it. There's a world of difference between a club being for sale and the owners actually looking to sell it. I mean, people who own houses and cars, they're always for sale if somebody comes and offers them a certain price. But are they actually looking to move house? It's a very different story. I think Fosun have been open for a long time to investment from the outside, at the very least. And because there's a realization that they can't keep up. They can't keep up with the level that they put in originally, and more importantly, they can't keep up with what so many teams in the Premier League are spending. So there's always been an openness to investment, but I don't think they're actively looking to shift it. Johnny may know differently, but they're open to it. If somebody comes in from the Gulf or the United States tomorrow and offers an amazing price, then yeah. But those people are fairly few and far between.
Yeah, Johnny, back to you on that, because like I know what Tom said about keeping up with Fosun as a group are worth billions, probably right up there in the top 5 or 6 owners. Obviously, because of PSR and all of that, a bit like Newcastle, they can't spend. But people are looking at them and saying, "Where's the ambition? Where is the ambition to improve the facilities at Molyneux?" You look across to Everton opening their spanking new stadium. Tottenham have done it. Arsenal have done it. Birmingham, you listen to the Birmingham owner talking on the pitch ahead of the Wrexham game. And how he's talking about the new stadium, investing in the community because he cares and stuff like that. You talk, you Man City spending. Yes. Hello.
I'm still here, but I am hearing some strange noises.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, Johnny. So like, people want to know about the ambition. And they're feeling that the ambition stopped. Jeff Shee in his business podcast that he did talk about we're not just content to make up the numbers, we want to get into Europe again. You know, you probably know better than us. Is that still the case?
You could. I think everything Jeff has said, you know, and presumably on behalf of Fosun, has shown where Wolves at with their ambition. I think that they come out with very different statements now than they did when they first walked through the door. When they first walked through the door, they were talking about emulating Manchester City, and they were talking about the Champions League. Since then, and this isn't me saying this is Jeff saying this, they've reined expectations in. They've changed in that sense. We've all seen that. That, I assume, is down to a realization that they can't do what they want to do in terms of They can't take the club to where they want it. I mean, what was commercial growth in those last figures? It was something like 1%, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think for the last year, it was shocking. It was shocking anyway. But whatever it was, it sort of laid bare where Wolves are at. And Fosun have probably realised that. They look at the stadium to knock the Steve Bull stand and do something fantastic with it. It's probably a 25-year project. You look at interest rates, etc., etc., etc. They're probably not going to do that. So when it comes to ambition, it's not what I think. It's what Fosun through Jeff have said themselves. You know, they've absolutely changed what they said at the start to what they've said now, and I think all fans know that. And I know there's a is it a minority? It's a minority, but a large minority of fans would probably rather Fosun sell up and go. I'm not there with that. I mean, maybe it's an age thing, and maybe I've I saw the Batties, I saw the absolute dross of the 90s when Sir Jack just put his kids in charge. I saw a lot of underachievement. I saw a lot of different things. Fosun, initially put in fortunes into this club, and they've given the club, some pretty special days. You look around the Premier League, you can see the owners who have got the ability to take clubs to a different plane, but likewise, you can see the owners that take the club in entirely the wrong direction, and you only have to look at West Bromwich Albion for that. You've got to be pragmatic and realistic, and I'm not saying that's a reduction of ambition, but you've got to be realistic about where you're at. Is the club for sale? I probably adhere to Tom's view. I don't think they're actively pursuing a sale. But if I woke up tomorrow morning and read that Wolves have been sold, I wouldn't be surprised. So, there's all sorts of things at play. I mean, they are an investment conglomerate after all, and a very, very successful one. So they're not there to prop up something, and just send good money after bad. It's one of those. It's really hard when you talk about ambition. I think. And I don't know whether this sounds depressing. I think, what can you hope for other than the Crystal Palace season? What can a lot of clubs hope for other than the Crystal Palace season, where they have some nice results in the league and go on a great cup run and get into Europe? I know a load of Palace fans who got the time of their life last year, the absolute time of their life, and what can you hope for? There's all sorts of clubs that are doing slightly different things. West Ham United have got a bigger stadium and a bigger fan base than Wolves. Everton I've touched about. But what West Ham had that conference thing. What can you hope to do? But I think that message that's just come across the screen there from Casey, she's spot on. The fans aren't asking for Champions League. What they are asking is to do as best you can and as well as you can. And I have every empathy with a supporter who will look at the current situation and say, "Oh, could we do a little bit better?" And that comes down to recruitment. That absolutely comes down to recruitment. But we could argue all day about where Wolves can go as a club, but I think to bring it back to where we're all at for these next few weeks, there needs to be some good recruitment.
Absolutely. I mean, Jeff's like as I say, talked in that podcast. It's like, we don't want to just be making up the numbers. We want to be trying to get back up the table. The fact of the matter is that people have to realise. I know some people are just like, get out of our club and all of this, but like, when they did take us over, we were nowhere. We were absolutely nowhere for years and years, and we went for 4 years. We went on that dream. We went to seventh European tours, and then we've gone 10th. COVID happened, 13th, 14th, 16th. The problem is the last 3 or 4 years since COVID, since that game against Tottenham Hotspur where we won and we were dreaming of Champions League. I remember it very well. And then because it's Wolves, there's a global bloody pandemic that it's just as we're about to make it, because that's just what happens to us. And obviously they got stung on a few things. And then it's almost like the model's changed. And you look at the likes of Coventry and people like that in the past that have skated around that trapdoor and they've got sucked in, and then they go into oblivion for ages. And we've been close and close. And I think where the penny has dropped thing comes in, every single fan wants our chairman and the board to think, Jesus Christ, we nearly went down. We need to learn these lessons and start acting like a big club. Wolves are a Premier League club, and all the Wolves fans want is to start acting like one. And we don't want to be told, if you want to win things, we ain't the club for you. They want to have hope, to dream of having, like what you're saying, these Crystal Palace, what they had last year and what they've had today. It's fantastic. We had a taste of it, and we want more of that. But if there's no hope, what is the point? So we're hoping that metaphorically penny has dropped. Tom, I know you've got around about 5 minutes. So if you want to just
if I just make a kind of wider point, really, I think this all plays into the fact that football's got a real competitive problem at the moment, and taking any kind of allegiances out of this entirely, and it's the last thing that Wolves owners would want to hear, actually. But I think what we really need this season is for the 3 teams who were relegated last year to do badly in the Championship, and for the 3 teams promoted, at least 2 of them, to do better than expected. Because I think it would give everyone a bit of a kick up the backside. Because I think that group of clubs I talked about right at the start of the podcast, I speak to, there's a guy I know who works at a Premier League club reasonably well. He says at the start of every year, they all get together, people who run the club, and say, right, which 3 teams are finishing below us this year? And that's the first question, I imagine, every club who's been in the Premier League for a while. And so really, they can say all the right things. They just want to bank the money. Bank the money, bank the money, bank the money, bank the money. That's the competitive problem football has. What are you doing it for in the end? You know, and occasionally you might have a dream season like the Crystal Palace one. And that's where fans get dissatisfied. So I think it'd be great generally for football if we had a little while of, I mean, we're probably all old enough to remember, aren't we? Like Newcastle coming up under Keegan and just being really good, and that not being a surprise. Leeds coming up winning the title too, and that not being a surprise because it was big clubs. Leicester is a different story, it was a surprise. But imagine now this year if Sunderland come up and finish 6th. I know it's not that long ago since Wolves finished 7th, but in this context, it feels like a lifetime, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And like it just can't happen anymore. So I think everybody would keep their house in order a lot better if they didn't think that every year there's this safety net, because they'll just all go down and we'll be all right. But look, guys, thanks so much for having me on. I better jump off now. I hope that's okay. But I really enjoyed it. I hope I've been able to kind of share a bit of insight here and there.
Tom, absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. As I say, go and check out Tom's article. The link is in the description on the mail. It's a really good in-depth article. You can sign in and see that. Tom, I know you've got a family Zoom at 9 o'clock, as you said before, but thanks ever so much for coming on. And guys, go and how can people follow you on socials? Yeah,
it's just an easy one, actually. My name's there, so it's just at Tom Collomosse on Twitter /X. So yeah, Wolves fans tend to be pretty kind on there, and like some fans of other clubs, so I won't mention on here. So always up for a good chat. All right. Well, we have a great community on here. Thanks ever so much, Tom. Thanks very much indeed. Cheers, Johnny. Take care. Cheers, Johnny. All the best, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Top bloke, Johnny. Now, before we go on to a Q&A at the end with everyone, I think it's we're at that stage now where we should just talk about the Mick McCarthy event. And guys, whilst Johnny's talking about that, you want to ask any question at all? It could be Johnny's favourite pizza topping if it has to be that. The Mick McCarthy thing. Let's tell us a bit more about this.
So it all stems back from the last one we did, which I think you were there at, when we did a Bullies big night out at the halls at Wolverhampton, and it was essentially around Bully's 60th birthday. And I've done quite a lot of theatre nights now, but I want, as an ambassador for the foundation, I wanted to do something where we could share some money with the foundation and let them benefit from the proceeds. So we came up with this idea to around Bully's 60th birthday to get Bully and some of his best mates from football on stage, and it went down really well. We got a full house at the halls at the Civic, and it just went down really well. The foundation was able to have a bit of a platform on the night, and you made a few quid for them, and we kept ticket prices at a very reasonable level, bearing in mind the costs involved and the fact that we are where we are in society at the moment, and not everyone's got ready cash available. And we looked at the next one to do, and Paul Berry, who's the co-author of the last book I wrote, Revolution of Wolves, he's a good friend, and he was the press officer at Wolves during Mick's time, during the whole of Mick's era, and he mentioned that it was 20 years since Mick signed in at Molyneux next year, which is amazing to think that, next year will be the 20th anniversary of Mick arriving at Molyneux. And he's such a good speaker. And in his own way, he did such a great job at Wolves under really tough circumstances. And people will probably make parallels with where we're at now. There wasn't a pot to piss in, so to speak, in those days, though. And he got the team in shape and took them up and got them promoted and kept them up for a good couple of years. So we just got Mick on board. Paul knows Mick really well, and sort of with his help, I was able to have a chat with Mick, tell him what we were going to do, and then we're going to bring in some of the players that he worked with as well. That's the and Friends section of that Mick McCarthy and Friends night. Get him down to the halls at Wolverhampton, at the Wolfront Hall, and make a few quid for the foundation. And I don't know, I mean, you're looking at it from a slightly different perspective, Dave, but you were there at the foundation 5-year strategy launch on Friday night, and you were at the Bully night. So I just think these things, I think that they're an opportunity to get people together, have a good time. It's got a fairly solid feel in terms of, we don't charge the earth for tickets, and so we make it affordable.
How much are the tickets for everyone?
They're 25 quid, but there is a booking fee and all that attached. And I think, for how much it costs to put events to put on, it's pretty much as low as we can go. Yeah. And you get a lot for that. I mean, you were there at the Bully night, you get a lot for that. And, there's a lot of visuals, there's a lot of all sorts of stuff. And then to bring it back to the foundation, the proceeds go to the foundation. You were at that 5-year strategy launch. I can't speak highly enough of what the foundation does in and around Wolverhampton and in the community. The reach is phenomenal. The people who work for it are phenomenal. And I just think money given or raised for the foundation is so valuable, and not a penny is wasted.
No, absolutely. I mean, we were went to the it was on was it Tuesday morning? No, Friday.
But yeah,
Friday. And there was so many stakeholders in there, and we were having a chat after we were having a bit of chicken, weren't we, and having a bit of a natter afterwards and everything. But it was such a really good and inspiring event, because the foundation, they get support from the club in terms of the badge, facilities and stuff, but they get a bit of money from the Premier League. We're putting on the Content Creators Cup, which is fantastic. I will put a link to that on in a second as well, towards the end of the show, which is a football tournament with all the fantastic creators that we have at Wolves, to try and raise money and awareness for the foundation, and say you're an ambassador, and every single event that you've put on has been absolutely brilliant, full of nostalgia. The Bully one was like on another. I don't know how you controlled them on that stage. To be honest, they were walking on and off and getting points and everything. I think the Mick one will probably be a little bit different to that one, but they've been great nights, and it was absolutely packed out. And then there's auctions and stuff for the foundation and stuff like that, and it raises a lot of money. One thing I will say, I mean, I know Jeff Shee does get a lot of stick, from the fans, but he turned up to the foundation on Friday along with Matt Wald and some of the other directors to support that event. So you have to give credit there. So he is back from we know he's back from Shanghai. So hopefully that means that the purse strings will be loosened as well. So the date of it is going to be the 30th of April, mate.
Yeah, it's miles away. It's Thursday, the 30th of April. But they did do 100 tickets went on that Friday morning when it went on general sale. They were telling me. So it will sell out. And it's a great Christmas stocking filler. There you go. If you're struggling for a present, I know we're miles away from Christmas, but if you're struggling for a present for that Wolves obsessive in your life, buy them a couple of tickets for this. It will be great. Mick's brilliant. He's got so many stories, not just about Wolves. There's a great film coming out about him apparently very soon about Saipan and Roy Keane. But he's got so many stories, not just about Wolves. And he's so highly regarded within the game. He's one of just a handful of managers that's managed 1,000 games of professional football in the English leagues. He'll be a phenomenal value, and he cares deeply about the foundation as well. He didn't hesitate really, and I thought he might, but he didn't hesitate when he knew what the cause was, and just said it was nice to be back. I think the older you get, the more you treasure the good moments. And don't get me wrong, he had a few dodgy times as well, but there were some great moments under Mick, and it would be lovely to relive those. And he's just, I just think he's great value.
Absolutely. Well, like Mick McCarthy, everyone, that line that you've put on the front there, my name's Mick McCarthy, not Merlin the Magician. I've actually had the pleasure, because he does have a lot of connections to Wolves. He's still great friends with a lot of people around Wolverhampton. And after about 18 months, I had the pleasure of being invited, and I was literally sat opposite Mick McCarthy having a curry in a curry house in Wolverhampton. And he's so down to earth, absolute, top guy. And he's got so many stories. And everyone, if you get like I say, the tickets will sell out for this one, so make sure you get your tickets. We put the link below as well. Put it on the screen a couple of times and in the chat. Get your tickets for that. Plan ahead, 30th of April. Maybe you'll be talking about us looking forward to an FA Cup final on that night or something like that. We'll be doing the Crystal Palace thing. So yeah, check that out. So have we got any questions to finish out the show for Johnny? The last 5 or 10 minutes of the show. And we can ask any questions. I could say even I say his favourite pizza topping or whatever it will be. But before we get on to that, I'll see whether there's any questions that pop in. What are your thoughts on Molyneux expansion and anything more on that? Because a lot of Wolves fans are frustrated. I mean, they have invested in the training ground this summer. They've expanded the away dressing room on instruction from the Premier League, so the away team doesn't have to warm up in the tunnel. Vitor's had screens put into the training room as well, I believe. But a lot of fans are thinking, like, especially in the steeple, when are Wolves going to do something with the stadium?
I mean, it needs doing. It absolutely needs doing. I just don't think it's a priority at the moment. And it would be brilliant. I think what they have been looking to speak to stakeholders, government, council, and private investors. I think if anything was to happen, it would need private equity from elsewhere. It wouldn't just be from Fosun. So I can't see much happening on the stadium.
No, absolutely, and people just want to hear that the roadmap. Connor wants to know if you had to grade Wolves' window from A to D so far, what grade would you give it, Johnny?
That's a good question. So if we're taking just the window, what have they done? So they've lost Nori, Semedo, and Cunha, 3 of the best players. They've signed Arias, Larson on a permanent. Jennifer Lopez, and Wolf, of course, yeah. So not enough, absolutely not enough. So far C, but I'd qualify that by saying it wouldn't take a lot to get into B and A territory. It wouldn't take a lot. It's funny, you look at the first team and you think if Andre or Gomez get injured in the middle, you think, oh my God, we're in massive trouble. But by the same token, you look at the first team and think, if we can get a couple in straight in, then I think we're looking in good shape. It feels so fragile. It really does. It feels like one of those. I just hope Pereira, I don't think he'll start the season with what he wants, but I hope by September the 1st he's got what he wants. Because it's a big Pereira brought a lot of the feel-good factor back, and there's a lot of goodwill that came with him. I'm not saying Wolves were lucky to stumble on him because they have that relationship with Chesterfield, which got them therein. So they weren't lucky that they got Pereira. That was always a possibility. But the way he took to Wolverhampton, the way he sort of drew a lot of people together was brilliant. And they're at a stage now where, they could go into the season in a nice position with a squad that Pereira's happy with and think, well, let's see where this takes us. But equally, they could go into the season with a squad that's just not there. Pereira becomes disillusioned, and you don't really want to think about what happens after that. So they're fine margins, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, we've escaped a couple of times with the January. I think most Wolves fans don't want to be thinking in January, we need to spend some, we want to be in a position where we're looking up the table, and let's hope that's the case. Craig Hughes' question is, do you know if there's any truth in the links between non-striker Mattis Alblind?
I don't, to be honest. No, sorry, Craig. I can add no value to that question.
Lana wants to know, would you be happy with a new super stadium at a new site, maybe somewhere like near the M54, if it meant Wolves expanding?
No, I don't. For lots of reasons. A city stadium, you can't underestimate the value that has. It's really to have a city stadium is fantastic, and not many clubs are left with that. Wolves aren't big enough to have a super new stadium. What's the point? Realistically, how many people can you get through the door at Wolves? I would rather have the stadium around its capacity now full, and it wasn't full all last season, don't forget, than a 40, 45, 50,000 stadium with banks, tens and tens of thousands of empty seats. I think it takes away a lot of the fabric and the culture. Wolves, I'm an out-of-towner, so I see Wolves perhaps from a different perspective than many Wolves fans. But what I love about Wolves, it's got incredible humility and about the fan base. And they're not a shouty fan base, but they're incredibly grounded and incredibly aware, and they're nobody's fools. And part of being in the city is part of having an identity and being, this is what we do. This is where we come. This is where we meet, and this is what we're about. And I think if you take that away and you end up on for argument's sake, some sort of American stadium with lots of parking lots on the M54, it loses its soul, it loses its character, it loses everything. Molyneux is everything. It's just so good, Molyneux. And I know we don't. I don't know the Steve Ball stand is dated. I know it's not what we want, but I don't know. I get the train up from London when I'm working at games or coming to watch as a fan. I just love that walk from the station. I just love it. I definitely wouldn't leave Molyneux.
No, but I think it's fair to say that some of the facilities are not up to Premier League
standard.
No, they're not. The Steve Ball stand, I know it's an issue. How do you do it? And I think there is ways of doing that with Molyneux, and I think 40,000 would probably be the limit for Wolves. I think
absolutely.
I think we had a successful team, we could fill that, but I think anything more than that, probably not. Are you drinking some wine at the moment, Johnny? By the way.
Yeah, I have a very, very long drive up from London to Liverpool.
Patrick wants to know what you're drinking.
So I stopped off at the Tesco Express before I got the kids to Liverpool, and I bought a Cabernet Sauvignon 2023. So I don't think it cost a lot of money. But there you go, Patrick. If you're going to spend £9 on a bottle of wine, go to Tesco's and buy that one because it's doing a job.
Other supermarkets you can go to. Billy Big Chops has got a question. If you know the answer to this, do Wolves as a club or Fosun with our badge making come from the Sudo Esports?
Don't know about Sudo, but I do know there is turnover from esports. It's not significant yet, but there is turnover. There's enough turnover from esports to make it worthwhile doing. And obviously it's brand awareness that other areas have failed to get into. So for all that, I'm not I didn't even play Championship Manager, Football Manager, whatever it's called. I'm so non-techie. I have absolutely no interest in esports, but it's the one thing I genuinely would defend Jeff's drive on, because it just opens up a completely different market, and its reach is phenomenal. there hasn't been a way to monetize it yet. Just as football back in the 80s wasn't really monetized, and it took the Premier League in a long time before football could be monetized. I think the thinking is that one day you can monetize esports in a big way, and if Wolves are in that conversation or there, that's fine. I know esports to a vast majority of the fan base is really annoying. It's not something I'm remotely interested in, but I would absolutely support the club in going down an esports route, because it's something that with the China link, they do have genuine expertise in, and they do have some, they haven't it's not going to pay for Isak. We're not going to sign Isak because esports has brought in 60 million quid. That it's nowhere near that, but I would back it as something worth pursuing.
Yeah, I mean, on that as well, I can understand why they do it. I think no one really, hopefully people can understand that we ain't Man United, we're not Man City, we can't sell 1 billion shirts. You got to find ways of making revenue and other ways to be able to grow those revenues and the commercial revenues and stuff like that. And the esports thing potentially is one way that, if Wolves are at the cutting edge of that as it grows, could up our revenues, and of course, as part of Fosun Sports.
Absolutely. And I think that it sort of went under the radar a bit in the last set of accounts, but that 1% commercial growth figure, where in many respects, back in Shanghai, that's probably quite frightening. That's quite sort of like, it's like you're there back in Shanghai, you're Fosun, you're looking at all your portfolio, and you look at Wolves and you see commercial growth 1%. And that maybe that's that's something that needs looking at. And how do you grow? How do you grow that further when Tom's gone off the conversation now, but Tom works on a national scale too, like I do. We work with a lot of other clubs, and we see what can be achieved at clubs that are just because of their reach, because of their where they're at, they're just on a different league. And I think that's hard. And I would never defend the owners if they were asset stripping, and I'd never defend the owners if they were sort of failing to do their best for the club. And I hear the argument there, but I would defend them when they're looking at 1% commercial growth and wondering where they can progress.
Well, you have to keep bringing in the revenues, because the cost of players and everything keeps going up as well. And
that's why you look at esports, and that's why you look at other things, because you've got to think differently. And Wolves aren't unique. Just to be clear, Wolves aren't unique in that. There are lots of clubs where commercial growth is not where they want it to be. There's just so many out there, and it's tough times. We all live in the UK, or a lot of us. We don't all live in the UK, but a lot of us on this podcast live in the UK. You go out your front door every day, and we know where we're at as a society, and we know how tough it is. So it is hard.
Matt Mills question wants to know, as the team as it stands right now, in the middle of August, where do you think Wolves would finish?
So right now, with no additions, I could not see us finishing outside the bottom 5.
Yeah. I think that's where most fans are probably at realistically. Stephen Williams, do you ever see Fosun replacing Jeff with someone else, given a clear approval rating decline over the last couple of years? There was a few years ago, I think there was a young Chinese chap I can't think of the guy's name now, that was Sky Son, yeah, and then he had a baby and went back to Beijing. Do you see that? Or Jeff?
I don't know. I think Jeff comes from that sort of gaming YouTube background.
You think Jeff's watching now? Hi, Jeff. How you doing, mate?
I think he could probably add a lot of value to that side, and does add value to the esports argument. If Fosun wanted to put in a football CEO, like a Jez Moxie type character, you mentioned Jez Moxie's name and the place blows up, sort of thing. But that sort of an individual that's sort of knows the football industry inside out and has real genuine football expertise, maybe that might happen if they feel that Jeff can be, his value is elsewhere. I don't know. Jeff's been here a long time, hasn't he? What are we looking at? Next summer, would that be 10 years?
coming up to 9-10 years, isn't it?
That's a long time, isn't it? Not a long time in the football world. That's a long time in the same role.
Yeah, it is. It is, and he might move up just to be head of Fosun Sports. I mean, I know he kind of is thing there, and then someone else comes underneath. I think, like, and the other thing is as well, what people need to understand: the restructures happened. Matt Wild and Matt Hobbs has gone. Matt Wild's taken on a bit of the thing. Dominique Atetti's come in. There has been a restructure, and obviously that's on Jeff's watch as well to hopefully enable Vitor to have the power to get what he wants. So people say that Vitor maybe hasn't been supported, but when you see who's come in and what's happened, he kind of is. We just need the players. Craig Berry, quite good question. Do you think football is as entertaining as it used to be? The introduction of VAR and the obsession with sideways backs and possession football is putting a lot of people on no off.
Yeah, and when Craig talks about VAR, I just don't like it. And I know it's probably improved accuracy, but I didn't get into football in the first place for accuracy. Do you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. I don't want to see sweeping injustices happening here, there, and everywhere. But it's not the thing that got me into football. I hate the VAR. I just hate that that sort of visceral celebration being cut short. And I think anyone who's gone to football from an early age, and the thing that got you hooked, I think VAR's robbed that celebration. It's robbed us of that. So
robbed us of the moment.
It's robbed us of the moment, unquestionably. And I'm not denying it. You know, I'm going against factual evidence that's saying more decisions are right and it's fairer with VAR. But it's not why I got into football. And I think a lot of us didn't for that reason. So, I don't think we're as entertained as we used to be. I think if you got rid of VAR immediately, then football would be a better watch. And I didn't see the last bit of it. But I was talking about tippy-tappy, backways, sideways stuff. Yeah, possibly. My favourite seasons as a Wolves fan, what would they be? They would be the bully years when we were essentially 4-4-2, kick and rush, flick onto bully. The 94-95 season under Graham Taylor, when we were the same thing, wingers and bashing it forward. But then the Nuno era, when we were very much just that's a different...
Five at the back, pace in attack.
Oh, my God. And that was... So I'm not quite with Craig on that. I think you can find ways to be circumspect and treasure the ball and treasure possession and be a bit possession-based, and it might seem dull, but I don't know. I think a quick counter. We lost the game, but do you remember when we played Liverpool in either Nuno's first or second season in the Premier League, and we scored a goal that Traore and Jimenez swapped passes down the right. I think Jimenez did it in, and I just came away from that thinking that was one of the great Wolves goals. It was one of the great Wolves games. And we didn't win it, but it was just so good. That sort of...
I think that's what most fans want to see. I think that's been the frustrating thing in pre-season, and it is pre-season, is that we want to get off our seats. We want the excitement. And it's been a bit like watching someone paint. It's been a bit boring. Let's hope the excitement comes back. Back on Mick McCarthy. Dean wants to know, have you got a favourite Mick McCarthy moment? His is the Hunt goal against Blackburn, and that was right in line with that goal, Johnny, when it went in, because I sit on the right hand side of the goal in the North Bank, and the curve and how it went in, and it was almost like it stood in midair for like a second until it hit the back of the net. Crazy game, that crazy game.
Maybe I should get Hunty along for the. He's a great lad, and he lives locally, so maybe I should get him.
To be honest, that would be absolutely brilliant, because that game, the Blackburn game, is a game that really stands out. The Mick McCarthy, because we were 3-0 down at half time. There was 5 clubs in that. If you've ever watched it back on YouTube, the thingy, Birmingham were winning. Then Tottenham equalised, and then we got a goal from, I think it was it Ahara that scored, and then we were singing, we only need one goal, Hunty puts one in, and then Birmingham are trying to sort of attack Tottenham. I think they get caught out right at the end, but like the last 2 minutes of that game, Blackburn, if we scored, Blackburn are relegated. If they score, we'll go down on goal difference. And it's like, you have the ball over there. It was the most surreal game. I think Hunty would be brilliant to bring in for that.
Yeah,
one.
maybe I'll give him a shout. I mean, he's a football agent now, so he probably won't pay him. But I'll definitely I'll give him a shout because it would be great to get Hunty along. So I will. I'll do that, Dave. To go back to the initial question, I watched that game on CFAX.
CFAX? Really?
It wasn't. CFAX was probably whatever the digital equivalent of CFAX was in a pub in Little Venice in London, because I'd gone out for lunch that day. I wasn't working, and I'd gone out for lunch and with a few friends, and we walked into a pub, and it was just a telly with an old BBC screen. It was CFAX or digital, and I just saw Hunty's name pop on it, and then various other, and then the table came up, and I thought, we're safe, so thank God for that. But yeah,
that's a great memory.
I missed all the drama because I've been cocking about in Little Venice down on the canal. But to go back to my favourite Mick moment, without doubt, the 3-1 win away at West Ham in, I think, the first Premier League season. And I took my then girlfriend, now wife, along, not remotely interested in football. And we lived in Mile End. We had a flat in Mile End at the time. So West Ham away was our nearest ground. And I'd sort of briefed her. I'd say, this is, we don't win. We're not very good. And we were just absolutely brilliant. And we scored 3. I don't know if you can remember. We scored 3 brilliant goals. It was Kevin Doyle scored 1. And then I think Zubar. I
remember him.
I want to say Jarvis, I can't remember. And 2 of them were down our end, and we went absolutely spare. And West Ham have this chicken run along the side opposite. So our away end was there, and as I'm looking at the pitch, to my left is their chicken run, where all their sort of hardcore fans are going ballistic. And our fans were just taking the mick out of them, something chronic, to the point where the stewards were stepping in and trying to nick some of our fans. And my missus was going, "This is like every game." I said, "No, it's absolutely not like every game. We've scored 3 goals. We're away from home." But it was just brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. It was a rearranged game, I think, as well. So it was midweek. So it was a night game. So I think we'd all been out beforehand as well. And it was just, that's my favourite Mick moment, the 3-1 win away at West Ham.
Right, that's an absolutely brilliant moment. Just having a look down on here. Question. Oh, this is a great question from Carl, one of our members. Who is the best person you've interviewed at a game? Good question, that.
So at a game, if it's like at a game in terms of the post-match and the pre-match interviews, without any shadow of doubt, Jose Mourinho when he's on one. I interviewed him after they drew at home to Burnley once, and they had a controversial sending off. And he walked in to the room, and he had a little piece of paper with 4 numbers written down in it. And I asked him a question, you always open up with a bland, anodyne question about how do you think it went, sort of thing. And he said, "I will say only this." And he read out minute this, minute that, and then tried to walk off. So I had to step in and like sort of semi-stop him and say, "What do you mean?" And he says, and he holds it up and goes, I repeat, minute this. And they're obviously the minutes where he feels there's been a great injustice. So I'm sort of saying, well, you can't just say that. Fans want to hear a bit more. And eventually we got him going, and he eventually got to about 2 minutes of interview. But he was thoroughly pissed off with the referee and what happened in the game. But Jose, I would say, always an at the game interview was one of the most challenging but great interviews. Klopp, again, good value. I struggle with Pep. I think Pep can be hard work, and
why is he hard work?
I think it's really hard to say this because
it's thoughtful about what he says.
I'm not in their shoes, so I would always say whoever comes into to be interviewed by us 10 minutes after a game has got it. It's hard, and so I'll always have empathy for the human, for the human behind it. I just find Pep a bit. I just think he could engage a little bit more. Some would say condescending, but just engage. Whereas Jose, even in that moment of refusing to engage with me and just saying I'm not going to say anything other than reading out these minutes, it was pantomime and it was theatre, and he was engaging, even though he was pretending he wasn't. He was.
He plays the game, didn't he?
And he's great. He was great. So I would always say Jose and Klopp always took a question on face value. But I understand, for all that I dislike interviewing Pep, because I find it, very difficult. I would always respect any manager coming out, because livelihoods are at stake, and we're on the outside looking in, and it must be incredibly difficult to answer the same question several times from the media immediately after a defeat.
Oh yeah, he gets the same question over and over again. Cosmic Glider, what a great name this is, Cosmic Glider. Do you think Hugo Bueno will say? He seems to be in Vitor's plans.
Yeah, the Cosmic Glider. That sounds like an early '90s trance band, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I saw Cosmic Glider at Gatecrasher. But anyway, moving on. To answer the question, I hope he stays. I'd have him in the squad. Yeah, I hope so. I don't know, but I hope he stays.
Absolutely. And any Wolfpack, any right backs that we've been linked to that you think will fill the Nelson loss?
That's an area for me. You've got to be starting Gomez over Hoover if it's a right back issue, and we've not signed one. So that's a big issue. So to expand on that and say that who are we looking at in terms of, and where's the squad now? We definitely need that area sorting. We need a forward thinking player. We've not got enough in attack. If anything happens to Andre or Joe Gomez, then we need to start saying prayers very quickly. If Yersin's coming back at centre back, that's great.
I like Yersin. Very athletic, right on the ball, good in the air.
That's great.
I like him.
That's great. On a wider issue, I'd be interested in the leadership on the pitch.
Have you heard anything about the captaincy? Because he seems to have tried a lot of people.
Well, there you go. Who's the captain? Who's the leader? And I know we all hark back to Connor Cody, but things turned south after he left. We haven't had a leader on the pitch. So I'd be interested to see where we get that leader from. And I think I'd like to think that the professionalism within the squad, somebody's going to step up.
Yeah.
For all that, there has quite rightly been a lot of concern about where Wolves are at in terms of their squad depth this season. It's still a Premier League football club. There's still great players there. And I'd like to think in amongst all that, there's somebody who'd be happy to take a leadership role.
Do you know what? I think Doc would probably, if he was going to play every week, the question with Doc is he more of a squad player now? And that's Troy Gomez, Totti, Agbadu.
I know what you mean. Doc's a great lad, and he's very, very sharp, and he's really astute, and he knows what's going on. I don't think he's a natural leader.
Interesting to see who's captain against City. Andy Gregory, what rule would you have in football? Would you get rid of or keep playing outside of the game? Or do you
if a new rule I'd have in football would be the elimination of VAR. So I can't look past that. If I could get rid of VAR, I could. I don't think football needs new rules. I think it's tinkered with far too often already. Aside from VAR, I like it as it is. I think we're okay. Maybe you could look at being a bit more helpful to attacking players being offside. Do you know that what really, really riles me is that disallowed goal up at Liverpool? Was it Pedro Neto out on the wing?
Oh, mate, he was running backwards. It was his heel. He was actually running backwards, and his heel was offside, wasn't he? I still can't believe that. And it was like he's literally the back of his heel was offside, and he was running away from goal, and he was still offside.
I know that drives me nuts, and that's not what the offside rule's about. The offside rule is to stop.
And what about when we beat them in the cup and they lost the camera angle as well? Because they amazingly lost the camera angle. So
you're right. But I just think that if we can find a way where Pedro Neto wouldn't be given offside for his heel being off away at Anfield, if you could find a rule that could encompass that,
I think if you're running away from goal,
I'm all in.
Then
if you eventually get yourself back onside, maybe I don't know, maybe there's something in that, but I'm sure there'll be a loophole that the strikers would find.
Here's one for you. This is quite interesting. What about? I think when he means a doc, he means a documentary.
Yeah.
Like All or Nothing Wolves. Could you not like get some of your TV guys to like get a Netflix or whatever documentary on Wolves? That would be amazing, and it would help raise the profile. Why the club don't do something like that?
That's a good point. We did a couple of standalone
documentaries.
Yeah, we did a couple of standalone ones, didn't we? Right at the start when Nuno was there, which were they were just like half-hour ones, or I think we did an hour for China and a couple of half-hour ones around the promotion, which were great. I think an Access All Areas doc, which the question was about, that would be interesting, because what I found, the Wrexham one, I thought was very well done. Very well produced.
Look at it; they've got bigger fan base in America than they have in
and they absolutely have, and it really worked for them. I found the Birmingham one a hard watch, and I thought
I've not seen that yet.
Yeah, don't get me wrong; it's full of good production values, and lots of money has been spent on it, and it's got all the drones and it's got all the arty-farty bits that you want with a good documentary behind the scenes. I think Tom Brady is hard to like on the back of it.
Yeah.
And to a lesser degree, Tom Wagner, but who's clearly a good businessman. I just found them hard to like. And I think you can't just open your doors and say, shoot everything. And bearing in mind, those two will have signed off on that documentary. So bearing in mind, there will have been stuff left out that they wouldn't have been happy with. The fact that went to air, and the fact that they both come across as not particularly likable, you've got to be careful when you open your doors.
A little bit careful thinking about
what do Wolves really want us to see?
Well, there's two answers to that. If you're a very personal, but we know that Jeff's quite a private person, generally private. You know, he gets on with it. He keeps himself to himself. I think he drives to the games on his own a lot of the time. So maybe he's not very much appealing to being on a major Hollywood production or anything like that. So in terms of growing the brand, which is part of the ambition, you know, with the esports and stuff, it would certainly do that. And
where I think there could be value, because again, costs come into this. If, for example, they went back to China, say they went back to China next year and sort of shone a torch on the other things they do outside football,
that would be really good. Yeah.
That'd be interesting, and I think Sky get on board with that. So, for example, we went out there in 2019 and put this hour out that went down really well, and it was an hour that sort of showcased.
We won the Asia Cup.
We won the Asia Cup. We showcased what Fosun were about, and it shed some light, I think, on the potential. And I think because things have stagnated a bit post COVID, and that, you know, post COVID is absolutely Fosun's problem. I think if we, you know, from a personal perspective, I'd love to go back and do something like that with Wolves.
Maybe have a conversation, Johnny, because I think a lot of fans will be really interested on, obviously involve the football side of it as well, but how it kind of crosses over and links in. Because I think at the moment that's why people get so peed off when they retweet a share an esports thing and it just gets hijacked. It's a little bit more understanding, and opening the doors to that might help, and it'd certainly be an interesting, not just to Wolves fans, but you know, to business and global and stuff as well. That might be worth having a conversation, because I think that'd be an interesting take. James wants to know, what was your first Wolves game, if you remember? It was 1991, a 5-0 loss at home to Barnsley, if you remember that one.
I remember it. I wasn't there, but I wasn't remember it. So I went, because I'm from Liverpool, I went to away games long before I went to home games. 4 years, actually. There's a 4-year gap. So my first game was January 1983. I remember very little about it. It was an FA Cup game away at Tranmere Rovers, which we won 1-0. There are three things that stick in my mind. It was, so I lived in Liverpool, and we got the local stopper train, to a place called Rock Ferry, which is where it's near Birkenhead, which is near Tranmere's ground. And I got off the local stopper train as the football special pulled in. Now, I'm of a certain age. Football specials used to be these British Rail trains that were essentially chartered by football clubs to take away fans to matches. And they were genuinely the shittest rolling stock imaginable. The trains were falling apart. and you could spill beer and whatever. And we pulled into on this little stopper train from Liverpool to Rock Ferry. And as we did, this, I don't know, 10 coach, it looked, I was a kid, I was tiny. This 10 coach train pulled in from Wolverhampton, and the noise and fans spilling off that train, it was like, oh my God, what I've walked into. I remember gripping my dad's hand ever so tightly. I was barely, I was still in shorts. I was virtually a toddler. And it was just amazing. I remember then we walked to the ground. I remember the pitch being covered in mud and no grass whatsoever. And I just remember the bright gold shirts getting muddy very quickly, and Kenny Hibbert scored. So, but there is one other thing, actually. There was a bloke behind us dropping the F-bomb non-stop. and for someone of my age, I found that truly shocking. So that was my first game, but I didn't go because, living up there, we went to a few local games. But I didn't go to Molyneux until 1987, and that was down in the 4th division. It was a Christmas top of the league clash with Leyton Orient.
Leyton Orient.
I think we were both going for a promotion, 87, 88. I think it was us and Leyton Orient, and I want to say I can't remember Cardiff. And Bully scored 2, and that was stood on the south bank when the Waterloo Road and the north bank was shut, and then the John Island was in Walsall, miles away. So it was like, it was interesting. So they're the two. So my first game was, ancient history, 83. My first Molyneux was 87. But to the point of the question, he said it's a wonder he ever came back after a 5-0. I bet he remembers lots of really vivid things. And I remember vivid things. I remember the floodlights just being so tall at home. I remember Bully, obviously, and everyone singing, "Ooh, Bully, 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 Bully." And then to that away game, I remember the football special, the muddy pitch, the bloke dropping the F-bombs. And that's what gets you hooked, isn't it, Dave?
Some of the recent best memories of the last sort of thing, when we went down to League One and we had that League One journey. And funny enough, Leyton Orient was the other team again that one of the teams we were up against. And like the 10K to MK and the 6-4 against Rotherham with the 3 pitch invasions and the 4 those things do stay in your mind, even though. And there was a sign, wasn't there, recently? I mean, we talk about Wolves now in the Premier League, and we're in the Championship for so many years, but that sign, this is our love, and it knows no division.
Yeah,
it stays with you.
And there's no other club that's more appropriate for. I think back, 20 years ago, more Wolves fans than any other supporter base had done the 92, simply because we've been in and out of all 4 divisions. And it's such a good, I love that. I love that more than the Wolves AWE thing and the more anything. I love that, this is our love and it knows no division, because for me, I feel that's Wolves for me. It was following them in the 4th division. It's my first game and some FA Cup game, and then the Batty era unfolded. And then it's what I will say is every game is one fan's first game. So we go to the match week after week after week. I don't these days, unfortunately. I get to a few away games and go where I can. You go to the match week after week after week. Each time you go, it'll be at least one fan will be there for the first time, and that fan will remember it for the same reasons we remember our first game. And that's why 10K to MK, that's why the 6-4, that's why all these things are so special, because for somebody that would have been their first game.
Do you know what? Talking about that, friend of mine's grandson took him to his first game. I think he was 3 or 2 or 3 the weekend. They went to the Celta Vigo game. When you're talking about that, it was his first game. Good question here from Cyborg, another one of our members. He wants to know what you thought on Mendes' relationship with Wolves. Does he have Wolves' best interests at heart?
So this is one of the reasons why when I wrote in the summer about structural change and why it would be a busy window for Wolves, a lot of it was based around Mendes. Regardless of what you think about agents, I'm not a fan of the concept of agents, because agents take money out of the game. So there is a certain amount of money in the game. It comes from broadcast revenue, it comes from season ticket money, it comes from supporters, it comes from sponsorship, it comes from advertising, it comes from merchandising, it comes from whatever. But there is money in the game. agents take that out of the game. And for me, that's a bad thing, because that money could have been invested in grassroots. It could have been invested in a new Steve Bull stand. It could have been invested in lots of different things, but instead it's being paid to agents. So if we bypass that and the fact that I don't want agents in the game, do I think Mendes is good for Wolves? And is it a good relationship? Absolutely. Because it gives us a USP, it gives us an edge, it gives us a place we can go to that other clubs can't go to. Do I think he has Wolves' best interests at heart? I think he has his own best interests at heart. But I think he has a good, now, certainly since Hobbs has gone, a better relationship. But I think he had a really good relationship with Wolves in 2017, 2016.
And he got pushed out of it, and by Hobbs.
Yeah. And Hobbs, to some degree, part of the problem, he was trying to make a name for himself. Hobbs did a lot of good stuff. I'm not going to sit here.
Andre Gomez.
I'm going to badmouth Matt Hobbs. He did the best he could under trying circumstances and for what he thought. But there's no denying there was an element of pushing his own agenda. I think
4-year contract for Gary O'Neill probably wasn't.
Yeah, he pushed his own agenda. He absolutely did. So the fact that he's not on the scene is helpful for our relationship with Mendes, and that gives us, an advantage. So I actually think the relationship in a world of agents, I actually think to have a relationship with Mendes is healthy.
Well, Valdir as well, isn't it? Is his number?
Valdir's great. Yeah. I think
he spent a lot of time at Wolves already.
Yeah, and he's almost, you can underestimate the value of Valdir.
Yeah, I've heard he's a really top lad.
What can I add one more thing? Can I add one more thing just on that Mendes thing?
Yeah.
What was key and has perhaps been overlooked in the initial rise that Wolves had is that players who might not have otherwise have been happy playing for Wolverhampton Wanderers were very happy playing for Wolves. So you had Moutinho, Neves, Jota, Jimenez, and various others who were happy here, and that's because of Valdir and to a wider extent George. He made them happy here. There was always that you're in a good place, you're in the right place, and something good's happening. So a lot of agents are disruptive. A lot of agents are not the best for their players and not the best for the club. I think when there was a big stable of Chesterfield players at the club, there was a sense of calm and happiness, and that's just something else they offered at that time.
And this is interesting, isn't it? It's kind of like went on a different model, and now Vitor's probably the closest thing that we've had to Nuno since, and maybe that's where they're hoping to try and get back to, and that's where most Wolves fans were happiest under the Nuno. Question here from we're coming towards the end of the show now. We're going to start wrapping up, guys, in the next 5 minutes. Sliding doors is a good question. If COVID never happened, where would Wolves be, Johnny?
Yeah, that's a great question from the Wolf Pack. God, it's so the COVID is so bloody Wolves, isn't it? It's just so bloody Wolves. In
the show, we beat Tottenham Hotspur. We were thinking Champions League, and then the world shuts down for a year.
Yeah, so I did that game for Sky. It was a Sunday game. It wasn't live, but I worked the game, and that away end, watching it just sat near the dugout, was off the scale. And then, funny enough, without name dropping, I ended up going out on a night out with Bully in Turnpike Lane afterwards in North London. He was doing some corporate stuff in the tunnel area. I bumped into him, and anyway, he was there with a load of his clan, and we had a top night. But anyway, that's by the by. To go back to what the Wolfpack was saying, I think that is the absolute sliding doors moment. I think everything changed because of COVID, and I think for all that Fosun have made mistakes, and for all that there's a lot of justified criticism, they didn't bring Fosun on. They didn't bring COVID onto this club, and it held us back in more ways than you could wish to imagine, on more different levels. So on a football level, it took away the home and away basis of a Europa League campaign, where we lost our home advantage. It took away the impetus of this huge fan base and this mobilizing behind a football club and being the focus of attention. It did untold damage to Nuno.
He was really affected because his family was away, couldn't get to see him.
Yeah, he had big issues there, and with his family as well. So it affected the football club, it affected the fan base, it affected the manager. And then even though the club, manfully soldiered on and finished that season 7th and ended up playing those pointless one-off games in Europe, they then had to start again. And the soul had been ripped out of the club. Nuno was gone. And I think it could have been so much different. At that stage, Wolves were still really, really pushing forward as a project, And
We were.
They
I know some people said that we lost games that once the restart, but the whole thing stopped. We had momentum. Teams like Tottenham had injuries; they got their injuries back because of the gap, and we ended up not making it into. We were so close because when we beat Tottenham that day, we Champions League was in reach.
Champions League was inside, absolutely, and there was no reason why we couldn't have sneaked in under Leicester. You can never underestimate that guy. I mean, the goal where Jimenez and Jota linked up for the winning goal away at Spurs was just off the scale. It was brilliant. And there've been so many good results that season. Yeah, I think to go back to what the Wolf Pack said, that for me is the sliding doors moment under Fosun's ownership. I think if COVID hadn't come, everything would be very, very different.
I think that's fair comment. There's a just finishing off now. I want to read this one. Stuart Kelso said one of your favourite bits of Johnny match reporting was Leicester missed penalty, then the Watford went down the other end and Deeney scored. What an incredible thing that was. And thing is, Johnny, with some of the rules they're proposing now with the rebounds, that they're talking about penalties can't beat on a rebound. That would never happen.
Yeah, it might be dead ball or something like that. Is that what they're talking about?
That's what they're proposing and doing like a penalty shootout. Like Chloe Kelly scored the rebound in the Euros, didn't they, for England?
I know there was a double kick, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Well, in the Euros, I think one of the players kicked it onto their other foot and was allowed to retake, where in the old days that would have been
classed as a miss.
But yeah, it's the Watford Leicester. Yeah, obviously I've worked at Sky for a very long time. That's without doubt the best moment of my reporting career in terms of being at a match. The only heartbreak was that I didn't get to see any of it because I was talking into a camera and the action was going on behind me, and I had a tiny sort of 6-inch by 6-inch monitor in front of me, and I was trying to work out what was going on. So my only regret is not.
I've got to be on YouTube somewhere.
I know. It's funny, I did a school talk a few months ago, and bearing in mind, what was that? It must have been about 2012, 2013 that happened. So 10, 12 years ago, maybe more. And I went into school and did a talk, some sort of careers talk that they'd asked me to do to a bunch of 14-year-olds. And then I obviously look a bit older now, full of grey hair and all the rest of it. So I wouldn't readily be identified with that Watford-Leicester moment. And then someone said, did you do the Watford-Leicester game? And I looked at them and they're 14 years old. I thought, well, you lot were 2 or 1 when it happened. But because it survived virally and on social media, it's lived on a bit. But I think what's lived on much better is Bill Leslie's commentary. That don't scratch your eyes or whatever. He's always say, do not scratch your eyes or whatever, something like that. I think Bill Leslie, the Sky commentator's commentary of that Watford-Leicester moment has got far more legs in it than me stumbling over my lines on Soccer Saturday. But it was a great moment to be involved in, and it's why we're all in football.
Absolutely. Listen, Johnny, it's been an absolutely. I know there's more questions we could do. Johnny will be on again anyway before we get to the Mick McCarthy thing, and we'll be talking about that. And he's been on many times before, so there'll be plenty of other opportunities to talk. And of course, we'll have a lot better idea of where Wolves are later on in the season. Just one thing that I do want to mention: it is the Man City game next week. It is going to be a massive game in more ways than one. The opening game of the Premier League season for Wolves. It is on Sky. It's a global audience. It is where Wolves will be paying tribute to Diogo Jota and his brother Andre, the old goal pack. have been working relentlessly. There's going to be the first time ever that there's been a TIFO at Molyneux ever. We've never had a TIFO before. There's a lot gone into that. They've raised a lot of money. So thanks for everyone that's contributed to that, and fair play to the club for topping it all up. And of course, one of the moments that are going to come out of that as well is that in an interview with Wolves a few years ago, he was asked in an interview what his favourite song was, which is Sting, Fields of Gold. I believe that's going to be played. So, guys, everyone needs to get into the ground, into your seats early for this one. You need to make sure that you're in the ground, that when the cameras are on, when the tributes are happening, everyone's there. And we show our due respect to Diogo to a worldwide audience. So please get into your seats early. Any final thoughts from you, Johnny, on the season, where everyone can find you?
No, just I absolutely echo what you just said about Diogo. It was heartbreaking, and I still find it incredibly difficult to comprehend what's happened there. And that's from looking at it from afar. And God knows what those close to him are going through. And I think he'll always be special for what he did at Wolves, and not just for that, just for the person he was. And I know, to bring it back to the foundation, the Wolves Foundation, he always threw himself into those activities with huge positivity and selflessness, and that was him. Yeah, it was heartbreaking what happened to Diogo. So I'd echo what you've just said there about that, and I'd also be hopeful that we can get in a position to give it a go this season, because I 100% understand where supporters' concerns lie. You only have to look at the squad to see that.
Absolutely. And well, there's still 3 weeks of the transfer window to go. We'll find out more, but as I say, get down there early. Let's make Molyneux very emotional and loud and proud, and just get behind the team. That's what you got to do. And I know that Molyneux will send an absolutely amazing tribute to Diogo. And interestingly enough, the old gold pack, I think they're there at around about 7 o'clock in the morning, starting to get ready all the work that's got to go in for this. So, fantastic. Johnny, absolutely amazing guest. Just to remind everyone again that the Mick McCarthy evenings on Thursdays, the 30th of April at the Halls. You can go to the Halls website and get your tickets for that. It will sell out. It will be a great evening. We might even get Stephen Hunt there as well. We've got over 2,100 people literally watching live right now, which is insane. So look, if you've enjoyed it, please smash a like. If you're following on YouTube, we'd be ever so grateful for a subscribe. Johnny, you've been an absolutely fantastic guest, and also big thank you to Tom, who came on in the first hour as well. And if you like this sort of stuff, hopefully we can get more of these on later on in the season. Cheers ever so much, guys, and thanks, Johnny, and always Wolves.
Thanks, Dave.